Correct.
Because I don't want drift. I mean, so we're going to make sure that we're going to take care of the mentally ill and everything else. We're not going to have it go to funding the arts or anything like that. It's all going to be specific. I'm wondering if you could do me a favor, and maybe it's in the bill. I apologize. I read the briefing, not the bill. But the net operating loss was unclear to me. If that isn't spelled out in the bill where it says you can't deduct the related expenses, could you put that in the bill for me so it's clear?
We'll have to get some language together and we can take a look.
Yeah, just to help out the tax accountants and tax lawyers, just to make sure it's specific.
Yeah, and that there is a provision in corporate tax code that says any deductions related, and I can send you,
That'd be great.
Send that to you.
Thank you. And then I'm just wondering, while I've got you, when you read a chapter in your accounting textbook, you get like an example, you know, so could you provide me an example of a healthcare corporation and what it's paying in taxes and the premium tax, and then what it will look like after we approve this MCO tax and what they will be paying under the new rules?
Yeah, we could put together a hypothetical.
Just a hypothetical, just so that when I visualize it, I see it better. And then, Mr. Chair, my last comment would be still maybe some way to kind of calm me down on the term winners and losers. And it seems like if we have one loser, that's one too many. And I just want to get my arms around that. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Kent.
And you said it was world famous?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll take that one.
Take it.
Senator Anderson, then I think Senator Leno had one remark.
I heard worldly and famous, but first of all, I just want to say that, you know, when those tax dollars start in California, they should be returned to California to our benefit. So the idea that we're trying to draw down that money, certainly returning that money to our communities makes good sense. When you were going through it, I had so many great questions, and then it gets so far away. So I apologize for taking you back a bit, but you were speaking in terms of winners and losers, and so let me back up. So not every provider is going to be a winner. We are going to have winners and losers. By that definition, because of the feds, is that correct?
So by definition, when you do these federal provider taxes and you provide them the model that you have built, they never want to see that everyone that is paying is getting everything back. And so the model itself, it's our shorthand reference for saying winners and losers. And obviously, a complicated model such as this, the model that we have built shows that to their satisfaction, but that is absent the other tax policy changes. So that is a different set of calculations that we can try to make assumptions on, but it's more of a provider tax reference when we show the model to the federal government, which is to say they put up $1, they get the $1 back, and that no one actually does those, you know, so it's not just a complete regeneration. And so that's what the model actually references.
So thinking in terms of those losers, are the offsets enough that they're revenue neutral, or will some companies actually lose on the tax?
So speaking from the highest aggregate standpoint, which is how we built the model, is that the amount of the tax policy changes, so the changes to the gross premiums tax and to the corporation tax, is greater by a fairly significant amount than the amount of the MCO tax on those plans. I have no ability to speak to each individual plan because obviously we don't know their business and corporate structure, but from the highest level of what we built, and again, back to the we can't hold plans harmless, we are confident that we have managed to ensure that the tax changes are both neutral and in some cases, obviously, because the tax changes are greater, that is a positive benefit. It's a complicated answer, but
So I'm going to try to distill it down because I think I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure it's correct. So initially, some people are going to be winners on the first pass. Others who have other adjusting taxes and tax scenarios will be made whole on the back end after you go through those filters. So is that correct to say that all of them will be winners when all the tax adjustments are made?
so that gets us into some federal issues that we wouldn't want to say are absolutely true. Back to the hold harmless. So again, we're constructing a model that, and I'm choosing my words carefully, right, because there's federal requirements. The model has been constructed to meet all the federal requirements, and that the tax policy changes that are concomitant with the imposition of the new tax, there is a net benefit overall because that number is greater than the tax being imposed.
Okay. I don't want to get you saying something you don't want to say, but in the scenario that some of them are not going to be held, are not going to be fully restored when the whole process is done, are there any guarantees in the bill that those losses or shortcomings aren't passed on to the consumers in increased premiums? So are there consumer guarantees that ultimately they won't have to bear the burden of additional taxes that weren't made whole?
So there's no such provision like that in the bill. And again, that is based on our inability to be able to do independent business valuations for each of the plans involved in the proposal. We have structured it in as beneficial as a way possible while still meeting all the federal requirements. But can I say that I know every single plan's business and tax treatment? I don't. And so that has been our struggle, right, which is why this has been so complicated, is we have to meet the federal rules. We wanted to make sure that we addressed affordability, but those tax policy changes are a net, that's a net amount greater, and the tax imposed is less than that. And that's as much as I can say because I can only see what the aggregate numbers are rather than on an individual plan-by-plan basis.
Let me flip over to the winner side. So will there be any winners that end up with a net profit off of the drawdown from the feds? So when they turn around and let's say it's $100 million of additional taxes, and maybe they're getting back $101 million of revenue with the drawdown and the rest. Are there going to be winners in this scenario that will end up with more money? And I'll lead you to my next question because it's not far afield from the last one. Are there any guarantees that those additional revenues to those companies are going to be passed on to the consumer?
So again, complicated because each plan has different structures in place. In the Medi-Cal taxes, MCO taxes that have been in place before, the plans have paid the tax and had the tax amount returned through their rates. They were not necessarily winners. They were held to a neutral standpoint, and that's why the last several have been so much easier and less complicated to deal with. I think that the notion that there's winners per se in our best model means that you pay into the tax, and if you're a 100% Medi-Cal plan, we're able to return that through the rates, which is completely allowable under federal law. again, to the extent that there are exemptions from both the gross premiums tax and the corporate tax, plans will, in some cases, probably be having to address how that exemption is handled in their rates going forward. So an exemption from the gross premiums tax obviously would probably have changes on a going forward basis for how those rates are developed on the CDI side. But I can't, again, speak to the individual treatment by each plan.
I have to commend you for all the hard work you've put into this. I'm not trying to be difficult, but like one of my colleagues had said, I have to explain this to my constituents. So I'm anticipating their questions. So could this potentially impact competitiveness between companies? Because we're looking at it in the aggregate. We're not looking at it company by company. So if I understand you correctly, potentially we could have one company who perhaps has a positive gain and another company who has a negative, I guess there's only positive gains and negative losses, but a gain and a loss, potentially making a region less or more competitive that was more competitive today as far as premium costs. It could change the premiums for some companies. So I'm saying positively or negatively.
I think that, again, we don't have any ability to know that from where we are, but I think that the point's well taken, and why it has taken us so long to get to this point is we in California have an incredibly competitive market. We have products that are regulated through 2 different regulatory agencies. We have a lot of plans and a lot of different areas, and so each one and each market has certainly got its own dynamics. And so I would say that is one of the challenges that we have had in this entire negotiation, is understanding to the greatest extent possible how this proposal impacts plans, and why we have structured it the way we have is to try to reduce as much as possible affordability concerns while still, meeting all the federal requirements. And so I think you have a fair statement, but I have no data to be able to demonstrate
So
that.
we can't rule it out and we can't guarantee against it.
I think that is fair.
Okay. I have another, through this, we've heard about retaliatory taxes. And can you just walk me through how we're going to address that issue? And what are the protections for the consumers in there that's not passed on through their premiums? One of the concerns I have is that, the consumer ultimately doesn't pay the price while we're trying to draw down federal monies. Our constituents shouldn't suffer through their premiums.
Yeah, so we had in earlier iterations of the bill, we had the proposal, we had, concerns about a retaliatory tax on the gross premium side, and we think that we've resolved that. We have a provision in the bill now that basically takes the health insurance component sort of out of the calculation of the retaliatory tax. So we believe that issue's been resolved.
And how do you do that?
Well, we say that for plans that are affected by the MCO tax, or insurers who have an affiliate that's affected by the MCO tax, that the imposition of that tax will not go towards the calculation of retaliatory tax. So in other words, they won't be subject to it because of a different rate being paid on their health insurance line of business.
And that's on page 3 of the bill, starting on line 8.
Okay. And then I'm sure when this committee is over, I'm going to have more questions, but did I understand correctly, there's a 3-year sunset in the bill? So even if we thought that this was the best thing since sliced bread as far as funding developmentally disabled and all the other communities that we'd like to fund with this, the best we could hope for is 3 years before we'd be scrambling again. I'd just like to say for the record, I'd prefer to put them back in the budget where they originated and guarantee that they have a good night's sleep, not worrying that 3 years from now they're going to be going through the same trials and tribulations. I believe that community deserves better from us. thank you for all your hard work on this. I know I've been tracking it since last year. Yeah, and I know this has not been an easy road. Thank you.
So I believe Senator Leno had a comment, and I believe Senator Morrell again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief. I just wanted to respond to Senator Nielsen's very generous comments, to return them to you, and to make the case that you and I will make a dynamic duo in Budget Committee with, I'm sure, very strong committee support in expressing to the Department of Finance why a top priority for use of these funds will be for developmentally disabled services. I look forward to that day.
Senator Morrell.
Yes. Thank you. And again, job well done. Appreciate your being as thorough as you can be. A couple of things. Senator Morlock had a request that he had asked of you guys to have some examples of some things. And also, just to follow up on Senator Anderson's comments about gains or losses, is there a way that you know, we were a little vague, but again, you did a great job, that as we move on, could you get some of those so that we have the facts together on those and really establish if there are going to be winners and losers, and perhaps get that to our committee before we meet again? I would appreciate that, because I'm still unclear, and the facts will help us all make a better choice on that. So if you could get that information to us, we would greatly appreciate that. And again, I'm done, and thank you so much for taking time this evening. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions from the members, just very brief comment. I personally would like to take this opportunity to thank Director Kent for all the work she's put into it, for her presentation. Obviously, Mary Cantwell as well for the modeling she put together, and also to the administration. And with that, we are going to move on to item number 3. Those who would like to speak in support, if you can come up, state your name and your position. And if you can stick around in case there's any further questions from any of the members. Thank you, Jennifer Kent. So good evening. If you can just state your name and position, and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Nick Luizos, Vice President of Legislative Affairs on behalf of the California Association of Health Plans. As you know, CAP represents 48 public and private organizations that collectively provide health care to over 25 million Californians. That includes over 10 million beneficiaries in Medi-Cal managed care, a population that will grow significantly this year. We believe that proper federal funding of the Medi-Cal program is critical to meet the needs of that program. CAP supports SB X215. We've worked tirelessly with the administration and the legislature for well over a year now to find a replacement for our current MCO tax, which we supported when it was originally conceived. Two of our priorities as a part of this discussion over the MCO tax have been to keep Medi-Cal revenue funding intact while also protecting the affordability of healthcare coverage. And we certainly appreciate the administration and their willingness to consider and address our principles. CAP supports the bill. We believe that it represents the best balance in achieving our shared goals. The bill does include 2 tax relief provisions. These relief provisions, coupled with other safeguards that we advocated for and that are contained in the bill, protect affordability of coverage while allowing the state to draw down considerable federal funding. And so we believe this is an important measure, and so in the interest of time, we'll leave it at that. But we do look forward to seeing the bill move at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Chair and members, Rick Rollins representing the Association of Regional Center Agencies, ARCA, and a proud member of the Linerman Coalition. We're here to support this effort and to also express our appreciation to Director Kent and the administration for putting together a viable way to save us from losing potentially $1 billion out of our budget. We see and support all efforts for funding, the much needed funding to the developmental disabilities services system. We support all the legislative activity, and we support every opportunity for additional funding, but we do honestly believe this is our best shot, quite frankly, of getting that much-needed infusion of funds into our system. Thank you.
Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access California. We're also here today in support of this measure. We would recall to you those very dark days when we faced a $38 billion budget deficit and the horrific cuts that we made in Medi-Cal, eliminating benefits like adult dental and podiatric and other important benefits, slashing rates, and the only thing that protected eligibility was federal requirements that prevented us from reducing eligibility. This proposal before you provides stability for funding for part of the funding for the Medi-Cal program. It is indeed more stable than general fund, which is often reliant on capital gains and of which we're too often reminded. So we support this because it helps to provide stability in Medi-Cal funding. We have looked at the question of affordability and the impact on premiums. Many of you know that we have fought hard to make sure that premiums are affordable, and we believe on net that this will not have an impact on premiums. Thank you.
Brianna Learman, Chief Executive Officer of Local Health Plans of California, representing all 16 of the local nonprofit community-based health plans, serving just about 70% of the Medi-Cal managed care population in the state of California. We have been working with CAP and our commercial plan partners and the department over the last year over numerous iterations of a managed care tax model that's fair, equitable, and meets the complicated federal requirements. And we are here in support today of this MCO tax proposal. We think that the department has accomplished what at times seemed like a truly insurmountable task of coming up with an MCO tax model that works for everyone across the market. And I think that the fact that we have the health plans here through their associations in support of a tax on themselves is testament to the quality of the MCO tax model. We're staring down the expiration of the MCO tax in just a few months, which means that failure to pass this means that we will be sitting here in a few months instead talking about a $2 billion tax, a $2 billion hole in a program that serves just under 12 million of our sickest and neediest Californians. We strongly support this tax proposal. We think it offers the most stable, predictable source of funding to this program. We thank the Senator and we thank the Department for the efforts, and we would ask for your support as well.
Linda Way with Western Center on Law and Poverty in support of the MCO tax proposal, as we don't want to see over $1 billion in cuts to the Medi-Cal program.
Hi, I'm Nancy Chance. I'm the Executive Director of Choices Person-Centered Services, providing supported living services, day program services, and independent living services to people with developmental disabilities. I'm also a family member of a husband with a traumatic brain injury and a member of California Person-Centered Advocacy Partnership. I'm here today to, in strong support of the managed care organization tax reform, and as you all spoke to the funding for folks with developmental disabilities. I think it's extremely important, and I applaud you for all of you for supporting that. Thank you.
Marty Yamato, family member. My older sister had developmental disabilities, also received Medicare and Medi-Cal. And I'm with the California Disability Senior Community Action Network and also with the California Person-Centered Advocacy Partnership. Just want to thank the administration for its work on this managed care tax reform, tax, whatever it's called. It's called many things now. But also I want to applaud the members, the Republicans and Democrats in both houses and the staffs for really showing a sincere commitment and effort towards our community, people with developmental disabilities and our families. I just want to urge the legislature and the administration to work with us so that the new level of funding has specifics that are person-centered, that are targeted, with outcomes that address the unmet needs, and especially addressing the issues of cultural disparities, issues related to aging, and provide significant resources for the transition to get people, our people, out of crisis and for transition to move our people so that we can fully comply with the new home and community-based services rules and also the new employment rules. One suggestion, if the legislature and the administration and advocates are having a hard time drilling down on the specifics of the new level of funding, which I agree should be $300 to $350 million, then one approach might be that the legislature lock in that amount, work with the administration to lock in that amount tied to the MCO, and then instruct and require that advocates, the administration, and legislature work on the details and come back with the details before the budget is put to bed in June. An approach like this was used in 2009, 2011, but only was during cuts, and a specific reduction amount was approved with instructions to stakeholders to come up with details in terms of cost savings. So that might be a more thoughtful way to come up with the best solutions to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Farrah McDade-Ting with the California State Association of Counties, CSAC, representing California's 58 counties in support of this bill.
Mr. Chair and members, Julian Voris here on behalf of the urban counties of California, also here in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Mandy Lee on behalf of Sutter Health. If I could quickly offer our perspective also as a health system. Sutter is the largest provider of hospital services to the Medi-Cal population in our geographical footprint. And so addressing the funding gap and providing for the sustainability of the program is of critical importance to us. Thank you for getting us to this point.
Good evening, members. Andrew Kiefer with Blue Shield of California, and we are in support of this measure.
Evening, members. Dan Chick with HealthNet. We are in support of this measure. Thank you.
Teresa Stark with Kaiser Permanente. We are technically neutral, but I would echo the comments of my colleagues in support today. We're comfortable with the proposal and would like to see it move forward. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Allison Howard. I'm the Director of Supported Living Services for Choices Person-Centered Services. I'm also a part of the California Person-Centered Advocacy Partnership. I, too, am here in strong support of the MCO tax reform and the increase that is tied into this reform for people with developmental disabilities. Thank you for letting us speak today and for showing support for the DD community.
I always have to put it up. My name is Jackie Dillard-Foss. I'm with the California Supported Living Network, and I'm squatting, and also a member of the Lanterman Coalition. First and foremost, I really want to thank the Democrats and the Republicans for really dialing in on the crisis that's in our community. The individuals with developmental disabilities and those we support, I think it feels like we've been a nonstop fight. So it has been really nice to see that everybody is as passionate to get into a solution. If the MCO tax reform is that revenue solution for us to get the expenditure this community needs, I celebrate it. It will be a glorious day for this community to stabilize, and maybe we can eventually move forward and fulfill the promises of the Lanterman Act. So thank you.
Good evening, Barry Giardini with the California Disability Services Association. First, again, I would also like to just thank the bipartisan support from the Senate for our system. We couldn't be more grateful for all the hard work that's gone into this. We hope we're really close to a deal here, and we hope it just gets pushed across the line. Thank you so much.
Okay, any opposition?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members. Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of Consumer Watchdog. We do have concerns, and we are opposed to the proposal as it's currently drafted, but let me clarify our position. First off, we are very supportive and very grateful of all of the efforts to address the billion-dollar hole in Medi-Cal. We completely understand that. We're supportive. We want to see that move forward. We want to see that fixed. There are, wonderful programs that need to be funded going forward, and I have many friends on the other side who have testified in support over the years of those programs, as have I, so we're wholly supportive of that. The concern that Consumer Watchdog has is that in addition to the MCO tax rate payback kind of component, is that there's also in the bill essentially an exemption from the gross premium tax for health insurers. And when you pull back some of the layers, you will find that in the end it could be a negative impact on California as a whole. And here's why. When you began the discussion a year or so ago, a little bit more than a year ago, on trying to address this gap, the discussion about the gross premium tax was in the context of what had been done in 2009 when there was legislation adopted, I believe the Bass legislation, to impose a quote, gross premium tax to help fund managed care, Medi-Cal. It was not really talked about as a standalone requirement pursuant to the California Constitution, which it is. It's in the California Constitution that insurers have to pay this gross premium tax. In 2009, health insurers had staked a position for many, many years that they are not subject to that tax that is contained in the California Constitution. And up until then, there had not been any legal determination that they, in fact, had to pay that gross premium tax. So all of the discussion about the gross premium tax that was adopted in 2009 was a construct of the legislature. It was an agreement amongst folks, including the health insurers, and it addressed a very big problem. Fast forward to today. In September, just a few months ago, an appellate court in Los Angeles found that health insurers are in fact subject to the gross premium tax that is contained in the California Constitution, which means they have to pay this tax. And so the dynamics have changed. And even though we talk about tax swap and we talk about the gross premium offset, it's not really apples and oranges, but it's apples and apples, but it's different apples now, because what's contained in this bill potentially is an exemption from what the appellate court in Los Angeles just determined is a constitutional requirement of health insurers to pay the gross premium tax, which could generate roughly, back of the envelope estimates, $1.5 billion a year to the state. And so the way this bill is currently drafted, we could be losing out on that stream of revenue, while at the same time we're addressing a very crucial issue in Medi-Cal. We believe that the MCO issue, as it's drafted in this bill, could, as a standalone, survive and address the very important Medi-Cal issue. And at the same time, not give away this exemption to health insurers, especially in light of not only the Los Angeles decision, which actually went from the appellate court down back to the trial court, so that still needs to be finalized. But there are also a number of other, I believe there are 3 other cases that are pending right now addressing the exact same issue. So we may run into a situation, we already have to some degree, where the courts have said health insurers have to pay a gross premium tax pursuant to the California Constitution. And because this well-intentioned bill does a number of swaps and whatnot over the legislatively created gross premium tax in 2009, we may be shielding them from their tax responsibility that the courts have now determined they have to pay. So what we're asking is that as you go forward in the next few days to try to finalize this language, is separate the two. Ensure that this resolution to the MCO tax, the Medi-Cal, has no impact. I believe Senator Mitchell asked about the lawsuits, and this is related to those. Has no impact, 1, on the pending lawsuits, but 2, has no impact on what the court has already decided in September, which is that health insurers have to pay this gross premium tax. And it shouldn't be a 3 or 4 year exemption. It shouldn't go into the future, and it shouldn't affect back taxes. The article that Senator Mitchell referenced, there was an estimate, again, back of the envelope, estimate that there could be $10 billion in back taxes that could be owed to the state of California. Certainly a lot that can be done with that money. So in the well understood and well supported desire to address the Medi-Cal issue, do not at the same time undermine what has now emerged as potential new revenue source for the state of California, and I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? State your name and position, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, Fred Main on behalf of Cigna Life and Health Insurance Company. We are opposed to the MCO tax as it's currently drafted in SB X 215, but I want to state we have spent a year trying to find a position of support for the extension of the tax, including the payment by Cigna. We've supported a tax that would, proposals that would have raised more money in total than currently. However, our legal counsel has been working with the Department of Managed Healthcare Council for over a year on a competitive disadvantage issue, and as a result, in the current formulation of the bill, exemptions provided only to only some of the plans through the proposal compound intra-company competitive disadvantages. While we cannot discuss product design details in this setting, we are opposed to a tax moving forward that does not impose the tax equally based on product type and instead chooses which plans will enjoy exemptions based upon the adjustment authority of the department with the tax. We think that there is language that would make it clear that products should be treated equally, and that would remove this as a tax issue. And I want to reiterate that it goes to the tax, MCO tax provisions, not other unrelated policy decisions, but in its current form, we are opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from any of the members? Senator Anderson.
When we had There it's on again. I'll try to be rapid before it goes out again. Mr. Chairman, you're not playing games with me, are you? So when we heard testimony earlier, speaking in terms of winners and losers, how would you characterize your company's position?
On total, we're very close to being just net neutral, but we think the bigger issue is on our opposition is based on this issue of intercompany competition, not just on winners and losers in total tax liability, and that the important distinction is on products that are marketed to the similar markets, they should be treated the same.
Would it be fair to characterize your competition as being winners then?
That would be very fair to say, yes.
Thank you.
Senator Pan, I believe, had a question.
I had a question for Mr. Luizzo from the California Association of Health Plans. Oh, thank you. I know several of my colleagues have raised some questions regarding DHS's authority in the proposed bill to make adjustments and so forth. And I know that the director spoke very well about the limits that the bill actually constrains the department in terms of being sure it meets intention of bill. But as the association representing entities being taxed, do you feel comfortable with DHS's authority or the constraints under authority regarding this tax swap in the bill, that their authority is reasonably directed and constrained to ensure that it meets the purposes of the bill?
Yes, and this is something that was extensively debated between our association and the administration, and the original proposal that they had constructed was not acceptable to us, and they came back with a new version, and our members are comfortable with the new approach.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you so very much. And I guess just one other just general statement is that I know also was commented about California is a donor state when it comes to federal funds in terms of we pay more in taxes than we get back. This is an opportunity to ensure that the taxpayers of California actually get more of the money back for our California economy by doing this in terms of the matching fund. So I hope we don't miss this opportunity. Thank you.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't often, Mr. Luizos, have a chance to say thank you. And to you.
You're welcome. I don't have that opportunity either.
Association of Health Plans, but we're all aware of how much time, energy you put into this, and sincerely so. And so that we can reach this point is great for all of us. And so I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely.
Seeing no other questions, just a couple of comments before I close. First of all, again, I'd like to thank the department. I'd like to thank all those who were in support. Obviously, I'd like to extend my thanks to the Republicans for their thoughtful questions. I understand their concerns, but also I have to look at, what is the overall best for the state of California and what is at hand. Keep in mind that we were given a whole set of rules, new rules that were given to us on behalf of the federal government, and which means that we had to tax all the plans. It was an extremely difficult process, as you all heard, over a year in trying to negotiate it, but I think we were negotiating in good faith and tried to do everything we could to make sure that everyone was held harmless, as close to as possible. Even with the opposition from Cigna, when asked by one of the good senators from the Republican side, they said that they felt that he was even net neutral, so there wasn't even a significant loss to Cigna. It's unfortunate that, if Cigna would take Medi-Cal, I think they'd be even a bigger winner at that, and perhaps maybe they would consider taking Medi-Cal and perhaps even being in Covered California and participating in that process as well. But at the end of the day, we have to still make some tough decisions, and if this MCO tax does not move forward, as what Senator Pan mentioned, that not only are we going to be down the 1.23, but the matching funds, that's that much more money that's not going to be available for decisions that we're going to be needing to make sure that individuals have these resources. But I think the most compelling statement that I've heard from both sides, Democrats as well as Republicans, is that in the budget process, the highest priority that we're going to have is to make sure that the DD community gets their fair share of money in the budget. Now, if this money is not available, it's going to make it that much more difficult. So obviously, I'm extremely supportive of it. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone who came here this afternoon or this evening. And seeing no other comments from any of the members, we are in adjournment. Thank you.